Uh, I'm pretty new to MVVM myself, so this has been a pretty good learning experience. And I've spent a bit of time over the last few, I guess, month now, digging into this and kind of getting up to speed. So with that, let's get into it. So the first thing, what is MVVM? It stands for Model View View Model, and it was a variation on the MVP, or the Model View Presenter design pattern created by Martin Fowler. It was created at Microsoft pretty much specifically for the use or for the Silverlight and WPF platforms. And to kind of summarize what it is, it's just a way to loosely bind, as I said there, a way to loosely bind model to a view. And kind of more than that, at least the way I've kind of seen it, the way I take a look at it is it's a way of event programming through change events of properties. I'm sure I completely oversimplified that, but that's a lot of what I've seen. I mean, you can still use things like click, but rather than using click for a button, you use a command. It's a lot of smaller things like that, and like I said, a lot of on-property changed events in your view model or in your backing model. So another one of the things that I looked at is some of the MVVM frameworks, which I'm actually not going to use today, but it's something I'm looking forward to use, maybe doing some webinars and videos on in the future. And a couple of them that I looked at is MVVM Lite, available at mvvmlite.codeplex.com, and the other one is Caliburn at caliburn.codeplex.com, and Caliburn Micro.codeplex.com. Honestly, I've only really dug into the Caliburn Micro, but so far it has a lot of features that I think are pretty interesting. The ability to bind view models to a view without having to use binding statements. It uses some inspection process. It also does IOC injection, all sorts of fun things like that. So those are some things, if you're getting into it, definitely I would take a look at some of the extended frameworks, but for the simplicity of what I'm doing today, not necessary. So with that, we're going to get into some code. All right, what I have here is standard Visual Studio 2010. I'm going to go ahead and create a Silverlight project, and we're going to call this MVVM webinar. All right. And I'm not going to create a secondary project for just to have it do it on the fly. All right. So what we have here said is the pretty simple and straightforward empty project. I'm going to create a folder for our model, and I'm also going to be adding something a little later, but we're going to create a helpers folder as well, just to keep things a little segregated and clean. All right. I've already taken the time to actually, you know what? I did go through and create a model already, but since I'm since we're only planning on 45 minutes, I think I can actually get through that pretty quick. So we're just going to create it from scratch. So first thing, the model that I had come up with is a performance metric for a team, and I went with some like customer sat models. We'll do the same thing. So we're going to make a class called team member, and to that class we're going to add a name and a customer sat score. Okay, we're going to create a constructor. Oops. All right, so now we have our base model here, name, customer sat score, and a constructor. We're also going to make this thing use the iProperty notified event. I'm sorry, notify property changed interface. So that's what system dot. Actually, I don't need to do that. Just do it this way. notify property changed. Oops. All right, and there we go. Using system.component model, also have it create the property changed event. And let's see. We also need to add method for this. Detected void on prop, and that takes in a property name. And now we're just going to call the property change event. We're going to use this so that if anybody decides to manually change any of their properties elsewhere, our UI would be updated appropriately. So new, pass in the property name. There we go. So, and the last part that we need to do is call on property changed. As I was mentioning before, those other frameworks like MVVM Lite and Caliburn both simplify this process quite a bit. They handle a lot of this. Either Caliburn handles invisibly, but MVVM Lite puts in a lot of methods and things that allow you to not have to worry about it, and it handles it all through, I'm guessing, some sort of inspection. So, and let's see, customer sat score. All right, and so we now have our team member, and we're going to add one more. We're going to make this a collection. So we're going to add one more class. We're going to call this team, and we're going to make it inherit observable collection of team member. Add the using. All right. I'm going to create a constructor, public team. All right. Oh, forgot to print there. All right. We're not going to do anything quite with that yet, but we're going to create a method that's just going to randomize the numbers in there. And just for the sake of the demo, not exactly a real-world scenario, but it will allow us to illustrate the MVVM binding process, as well as seeing the onCollection changed event, which will rebind the data source anytime it changes. So that we're going to just create a random number generator, and we're going to loop through each item in this, since we inherited from the observable collection. We're going to make that team member. All right, there we go. And member dot customer sat score is r dot next double. That'll give us a number between 0 and I think 1. And since we're dealing with customer sat scores in terms of percentage, that works out really well. And the last thing we need to do, so that anytime this generate new numbers class or method is called, is to call on collection changed. We pass in new notify collection of changed event args, and actually do that the easy way. There we go. And since this is randomizing all the values in it, I'm using the reset, which, as it says there, use this in the event that the collection changed dramatically. You know, replace, remove, add. I think it might just do deltas. I'm not exactly sure how it works on the back end, but since it's changing dramatically, since I'm randomizing everything, seems like a good one to go with. All right, and I'm not going to be pulling from a database. I'm just going to new up a handful of team members here. So we'll do Bob, and we'll give him a 0.995, and we're going to just copy that a handful of times. All right, let's see. Let's get a John, Mike, Julie, and let's see. We'll give John. So he's doing all right. Let's 63 for Mike, and let's do 71 for Julie. All right, so now we have a model class that's based off of the observable collection of team members. We have a method called generate new numbers, which just randomly generates new values for everybody and then calls the on collection changed. All right, that is the bulk of it for our model. Now, as I mentioned before, I'm going to add a helper, and I had actually gotten this off of John Papa's blog, and what it is a delayed, or a what's it called, delegate command, which we'll be using to bind some button behavior on the UI. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy and paste that class from outside. All right, and we're going to call this Delegate Command. There we go. And let's make sure we have all of that. All right, let's see if that builds. Oh, didn't realize I had already had the class declaration in there. All right, just remove that. Okay, now that looks right. Make sure it builds. Basically, this is just a simple way to wire up commands that allow parameters. It also handles the can execute event, which all the commands support by default. So as I said, I got this off of John Papa's blog. You do a search for Delegate Command. He's one of the first few that come up. So feel free to make use of it. He opened it up for anybody to make use of. So there we go. We have our helper. We now have our models. And now we're going to create our view model. We're going to create another class. We're going to call this main page view model. Okay. And main page view model, I'm going to add a callback. I'm going to create a variable or a property actually that is a representation of our team model that I'd created. I'm going to call this, let's call it current team. And it's just going to have, using. Why am I not, did I not make, must not have made that public. No, it is. Model, oh. Got to add the using MVVM webinar dot model. There. Now we have our I see what the issue is. Might help to do that in the class. Let's try that again. Public team current team, and we're going to make just a get. All right, and it's going to return current team. User factor and declare field. I'll create the backing store for that. And last thing we need to do is make sure it knows up that instance. All right. So now we have our team that we can use in our view model. We're going to also need to create an I command for part of our UI. We're going to use a button. We're going to put a chart on the screen, and we're going to use a button that calls a command that randomizes all of our data, or all of our customer sat scores. So command, we're going to call this the randomize team command, and make this an anonymous property. There we go. So now we have that. We need to set that up. So I'm going to create a constructor, and we're going to new that up and give it some methods. So as I said, we're using the new helpers.delegate command, and we're going to call this randomize team. So that's what happens when it's executed. And there's an option called can execute, which evaluates to determine whether or not to enable a button or anything that implements the command interfaces. So let's see, we need that one, and we'll use can randomize team. All right, we'll go back and create those. Oh. Can't do it there, that's okay. So the first one, actually make these private, void randomize team, and take in an object parameter, and that's just going to call current team dot generate new numbers. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. And then the other one, the can randomize team, the one that checks for the ability to execute, returns a bool. So we're going to, since I actually didn't have any need to enable or disable the button, we are just going to be returning true, just for, so that the ability to randomize is always going to be there. The button will never be disabled. So, all right, perfect. So far we've got our command object. We initialized it, gave it a couple of methods that it can call back to, and we've created an instance of our team. That's pretty much it for our view model. Now, it's time to create some UI. So, first thing we're going to do is we're going to give a reference. We're going to reference out to the view model we just made. XML-NS. We're going to call this VM for view model, and CLR namespace, and there we go. It's going to give us the ability to, right here, use data context, so user control.data context. This is going to allow us to reference our view model. Also, something to note is your view model needs to have a parameterless constructor if you're going to do it this way.
Brian, can you hear me? I think we may have lost you.
Oh,
Brian?
I thought did I lose Mike right there?
Yeah, you did.
Okay, good. I thought I'd heard something. Yeah, it decided to stop. All right, sorry about that. All right, so as I was saying, adding the namespace allows us to add our view model here to the data context. So now we can go VM and main page view model, which we'd created. So now what that's going to allow us to do is to really easily bind our controls. So first thing I'm going to draw, actually before we do that, I'm going to split up this UI. Since we're dealing with a grid, we're going to use some UI or some grid layout there. Change this to star, and we're going to give it grid, let's say a height of 50. Nice and simple. All right. And in the top part, I'm going to drop a chart control. Put that up there. See, it's adding the references over there. I'm going to get rid of the margin because I want it to be maximized. All right, and I don't know why I get that, but we're going to change that to grid.row equals 0. So we're in the first box. So that's all there is for dragging the chart control. And then the next thing we're going to drag on is a button. So we're going to use a standard Silverlight button. Put that right there. And we're going to call it randomize. There we go. All right. So now we've taken a moment and configure. Oops. There we go. Configure our chart control. So first thing we need to add is a diagram. I'm going to use just a standard bar chart for this. So we're going to create an XY diagram. And after that, we just need to add a series. Scroll down to series. There it is. And pull up the series property box, and we're going to change a few things. Oops, not paint. Let's try points. We're going to add some point options. Since, as I said, we're dealing with a customer sat score, it's a percentage-based item. So I'm going to give it some styling so that the percent looks good. So we're going to use the value as our point label. And since that's numeric, we're going to change the value to currency, and we're going to give it 0 for precision. We're just going to go with straight percentage. All right, I think that's about it for that. I'm not going to, for the sake of this demo, I'm not going to add titles, but yeah, you could go through the wizard or through the property grid and add titles or anything else as desired. Now let's see, the next thing we're going to have to do here is find our series, which is right there, and then the next thing down there is the actual definition of our series collection, and we're going to add data source. And as I said before, one of the upside of using the data context at the top there is I can just say binding current team. And that's it for that. We have to tell it what our parameter names are. So we have to say the argument data member, which was the name, and then the value data member, which would be the customer sat score. And like that, we have data. All right. Let's see. And as I said, we created this button. The whole purpose of the button was to randomize our customer sat scores. You know. And that's actually quite easy. We're just going to say command binding and the randomize team command that we had created and initialized in the constructor. So let's build that. See how that builds. And well, it looks like it's all good. I'm going to hit F5 to execute. I'll drag that window over. Oh, we have some interesting behavior there with the $1. I'll have to see what's going on there, but let's check to see if our randomize works, and it does. So one of the things our charts listen to the the changed on collection changed event. Since we fire the on collection changed event every time we generate new numbers, our chart automatically recognizes that and updates as appropriate. So let's do a quick look and see why we're getting. Oh, I think it's because I chose 0 precision on the chart. Let's try that again, but with 2. And I chose currency, not percent. That's why. Percent. There we go. Yeah, that looks a lot better. Let's rebuild that. And go. And randomize still works. We have good looking percent labels. And that is it. Granted, you could do a lot more with the can execute. We could dig into the data and update individual data sources, just remembering to call the on collection changed events. So that's all I had planned for today. I guess now we will open it up to any questions. Let's see. Here we go.
All right. Well, we currently we don't have any questions as of yet.
Okay. Well, as I said, one of the things I'm looking at doing here in the future is using probably both MVVM Lite and Caliburn, and going over some scenarios and how to use those with DevExpress charts, and probably digging into some more complex use of MVVM, maybe some IOC, stuff like that, and how to leverage some of our tools, our charts, and some of the other things, some of the other tools we have available to take advantage and use the MVVM not platform, but pattern. Thank you. So
let's see, Brian. From Richard, he says Caliburn or Caliburn.micro.
I actually I did look at both, and Caliburn is huge and has lots of features, but I personally don't think I'll find myself using them. Caliburn Micro seems to have most everything that I think you're going to run into. It's got probably more than I'll end up using anytime soon, that's for sure. So I would start with Micro, and if that ends up not fitting your needs, I'd move on to the other. But so far, I've been a real big fan of Micro.
Cool. If you all have, okay, let's see. Richard says Caliburn.micro is the new one, and it's recommended to use it from Eisenberg.
There you go.
All right.
I seem to have stumbled down the right path.
Yeah, if you all have questions, get them in now while we'll give a few minutes for you to get those in. I just want to let you know that tomorrow is a double webinar day at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, reporting in Silverlight with reporting evangelist Seth Juarez, and at noon Pacific Standard Time, MVC combo box extensions, cascading combo boxes. In this webinar, you'll learn how to use the DevExpress ASP.NET MVC combo box extension, and you'll also see how to set up cascading combo boxes with ASP.NET evangelist Mehul Harry. And the 10 a.m. webinar is with our reporting evangelist Seth Juarez. And those are our final webinars for this week, and you can register at devexpress.com/webinars.
Excellent. Excellent. So do we get any other questions?
We have not. So
all right.
I would assume that maybe Richard was our final question.
Excellent. Well, everybody, I appreciate you taking the time to view my webinar. I'll let you say anything you need to say, Amanda.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
All right. So again, if you missed anything from this webinar or you want to review any previous webinars, you can visit us on the DevExpress channel at tv.devexpress.com. Again, thank you, Brian. Thanks so much for joining us, and thank you for choosing DevExpress.
Thank you. Bye-bye.